Apollo 13 that brought the guys back.
Yeah, well, was it the same engine the whole time, or did they do different engines?
No, pretty much the same.
So who made that engine then? I thought it was Grumman.
No, he just selected it. It was a subcontract. I don't know with Pratt & Whitney. Somehow they're in my head. GE's in my head. I'm not sure. I think it was GE up in Buffalo, because he flew up there a lot, and at one time there had been a terrible accident with the one of the astronauts having crashed and was killed. And I believe it was Wally Schirra was very nervous about coming back to Grumman and flying his own little plane, and begged Dad to ride back with him. Dad said no, he was gonna come commercial, and he did. They had lousy weather sometimes, and
so he had gotten. I did not realize this time frame, because I had thought that he went to the Merchant Marines, then he went to was in the Korean War.
He was the tail end of the Korean War.
Mm-hmm. Then I thought he went. Then I thought, like, after he left, he had the chance to sign on longer.
He did.
And then he ended up leaving.
I have that offering letter somewhere here.
Did he agonize over the decision to go into the Navy at all?
He loved the Navy. He really enjoyed it.
It was you that didn't like it so much.
I couldn't handle it. I would have been an alcoholic, as many of the wives were. They wouldn't even go down. There was one time period that he left just before Valentine's Day, and he didn't come back until July.
Yeah. So did you, and also you didn't have like all the different things you can do to communicate now.
That's right. And here's something funny.
Oh, so you really counted it out.
I counted the days.
It says days till Bob becomes a civilian. Days home were like in, what color? Like red. And days away are in blue. So, you really, so what, how did you know? Like, I guess it was, decided way in advance, huh?
Well, I don't know where the offering letter is here, of his new, the stations. He had to sign up. This is his photo album from Kings Point here. He had to sign up for 3 years, 3 additional years. It wouldn't have been sure duty, and I agreed that if we got Paris or Hawaii offered, that he could accept, and I would deal with 3 more years.
Why Paris or Hawaii?
As the base, home base.
But why were those two okay?
Exciting, but he got offered things in the United States, and it was mutual. I guess I was mostly influential in it, but
you had Hank, right?
We had Hank. Mom and Dad had taken our other dog, Jet, who was a bite-a-wee bailout, a dog-pound bailout. And you always, before you put your feet out of the bed, you always yelled and woke him up. Because if you forgot and you threw your legs out of the bed, he bit you.
How big a dog was he?
Not as big as your dogs are. He was probably 1.5 feet
What
high.
kind of dog was he?
He was black.
And was he Jet for Junie Thompson?
Yes.
And so you had gotten him, and then you sent him to your parents?
We could. It was bad enough taking one dog with us, but to take two would have been tough. And we were driving up to. Well, actually, he reported in Newport, but the ship was actually across the Narragansett Bay in Quonset. But he had to report to Newport, and we were going across the big bridge up there when the news of the Laty's sister ship, the Antietam, had blown up. The engine room had had a terrible accident, and there was all sorts of men hurt and killed and so forth. So that seemed to follow us, because when we transferred down to Florida for the LEM project, we're driving across the Indian River Bridge, and we had two cars. We had a girl's car and a boy's car, and it was before CBs or anything, so we had made up signs so that we could tell each other what we want to do. Bathroom, kids are hungry, and this sort of stuff.
See, now you just text.
I know. Too much for me. But we're driving across the bridge, and they told of the blow-up of the Apollo on the launch pad. Gus Grissom, White, and Chaffee were killed. And
What year was this?
this was, David was born in '65. We waited until he was legal here, so it was January of '67, I believe.
And when we're talking about legal, we're talking adoption, baby bears legal. Had Dad known any of these astronauts personally?
He had worked with the astronauts up here because he was in contact with them. Whether he knew those particular ones, Grissom was really kind of a guy that everybody knew, and well, they all were kind of half crazy.
I think you had to be.
Oh, I do too.
I mean, just sort of like modern cowboys in a way, or modern explorers. So, what was the mood like when you have so much hope and the country's lost, Kennedy in '63, and you have some really big, what was it like?
Well, I know that Dad immediately said, we're going to stay in a rental situation because I'm going to be shipped back to Bethpage. This is over. They won't continue with this for a long, long time. And they didn't ship us back. They kept us down there. And they continued with the program.
Do you think it was just the country was like, no, JFK said we're going to do this and we're going to do this, or the pressure of Russia? Or what do you think
Russia
kept everyone
had
going?
a lot to do with it. It was go get those guys and beat them, kind of an atmosphere. They had circled the moon first, but we walked on the moon first.
Yeah.
And Dad sat on the couch in the den down there in Florida. We were already in our own house on Kent Drive. I think that was 140 Kent Drive or something like that. And he just sat there watching the launch of the astronauts. And he threw back his arms and he said, well, the damn thing worked. And I thought, you creep. You've spent your entire working career, you spent Brian's second Thanksgiving in Houston, came home Christmas Eve, to your two little children, and I spent Thanksgiving alone, and you didn't have total faith that this thing would work. You had doubts. But he was a realist. He was really wonderful.
Were you very excited, though, that your husband was working on something that was so huge at that time? And even now? I mean, people say space program, I mean, that definitely, there's so much status to that.
That's funny because from my point of view and from watching what you guys communicated to me as you were growing up, there was shame.
Shame about what?
Having been involved with it. It was a WPA project. It was a way of paying people and keeping them working.
Was that one of the reasons behind the space program?
I wouldn't doubt that it might have had something to do.
Was there a economic slump in that time period?
There's always some sort of a economic up and down.
Interestingly enough, though, a lot of these WPA projects turn out to be such sources of pride looking back, you know, and you look at some of the things that take place as a result of that money going into those things.
Well, what puzzles me when I talk to my peers and admit that Dad was involved in it, and they have no concept that so many of the medical advances that have been made today came directly from the space program, minimizing things, and some of those cameras that they can now look down your throat and into your body. There's so many things, and
well, it's ultrasonic transducers for one. Now used for the medical field, but definitely also for space shuttle.
Yep.
Well, but he must have felt very proud about it.
He was such a humble person. He never really bragged about anything. A lot of the stuff was secret stuff. So that when he would go on a business trip, I would always be able to contact him if I needed him. But if I went into his room, and there was one bureau drawer, that if I found his watch, his wedding ring, and several other little items in that drawer, I knew that calling him was no good. And also in that drawer would be a telephone number that in a dire emergency I could call, and I would be put ultimately in contact with him.
Did he ever say why? Besides, I mean, some people would say, okay, he's leaving behind his wedding ring, and, you know. But did he ever say why that all that stuff had to stay behind?
He was working on secret stuff, and he would fly into one city, and a car would be available to him, not under his name, and he would drive to his ultimate destination. The Russians also had an embassy here on Long Island, over in Glen Cove, or someplace on the North Shore, and the computers in those days were room size, but they were also protecting them from the Russians being able to tap into the Grumman stuff. And it was felt that the reason they had the place over on the North Shore was because of proximity to Grumman. Fairchild was here, and so was Republic. So Republic out in Farmingdale, Fairchild, and Lake Success. This was a hotbed in here. He wasn't able to talk. He would not talk. one of the worst fights the two of us ever had. It was so bad that in our individual talks with interviews with the adoption agency, each of us referred to it when we were questioned about which was the worst disagreement we had ever had. And it was on the same subject of morality or whatever, ethics, whatever. The Navy wives had all been gossiping. We were living in a hotel apartment, and I knew that the ship was going down to Guantanamo Bay, and it was ready for evacuating civilians and so forth, because that's what the scuttlebutt was on the wives, and it was secret. And Dad was so mad that one of the men aboard the ship had told his wife, so the wife told all of us, and he was furious. I've never seen him so mad.
Well, it's the loose lips sink ships.
That was the point, and he felt that lives were involved in this.
Why? But I don't understand why you ended up being in a fight with him instead of like agreeing, or were you just like, hey, well, it's just the wives, we're not going to say it to anybody? Or did he personally was angry at you for passing on that information?
I guess it was more that I didn't recognize that I shouldn't be even passing it to him, because who else would I pass it to?
Well, obviously, very committed and serious, you know.
Well, that was Dad. I mean, he was very committed in everything he did.
Well, so what did you think about moving to Florida?
I thought it was an adventure. You guys were all young enough, and I told them until you were through junior high, I would go anywhere with him. But once you hit junior high, got out of junior high, I wanted to be stable and finish all of the high school years. It was an adventure. It was a lot of fun. In many ways, it was like the Navy, because everybody was there without family ties and wanted and willing to make friends quickly. And we made some good friends, and we had some very good times.
Well, you did. How did you meet the Marvins?
We finally decided, after living in a motel for about 6 weeks, and it was the Holiday Inn where the astronauts all stayed, and they congregated at the bar.
So you saw them?
Beg pardon?
You saw the astronauts while you were there?
Oh yeah. But you kids, you don't take 4 kids to a bar.
Right.
So we were a little limited. But anyway, we started looking for an apartment. Dad was still insecure, still felt that we were headed back for Bethpage. And we hadn't sold our house up here in Comic.
Had you not put it on the market, or you just said, because you were not sure what it was going to do?
Yeah, we wanted to give ourselves. We went to Cape Canaveral to this one apartment complex, and Dad went into the office. We never showed the 4 of you. I sat in the car, and he was talking to the rental agent. This young man came over to the car, and he said to me, "Are you thinking of moving in here?" And I said, "Yeah, my husband's in the office." He said, "I don't think this is the place for you." So he never explained. It turned out it was a very party place and so forth. So we went down the block to Cocoa Beach and found this lovely apartment complex. And the Marvins had already been there for a couple of months. And we rented there for a year and had a very good time there. Met some wonderful people. And it was a fun thing for you guys because the mothers were all into their kids. And if the sun came up in the morning, we had a party. If it was raining, we had another party. And one of the fun times down there was the library ran a costume parade. And the children had to be dressed up as their favorite story. Well, with the four of you, what do I do? So you were the three blind mice, and Ellen was the old lady. So you were all dressed that way. And we won group. But Priscilla had Tuffy the tugboat, and she beat me out. So they got to ride in a golf cart with, who was the woman that was Jeannie on TV?
I know who you're talking about.
Well, she came down for the, it must have been July 4th parade.
She must have been gorgeous.
She was gorgeous. And Lane and the Marvins got to ride with her, and we stood on the street corner and were way down.
I think I remember that. Jeannie, Barbara, whatever her name is, but yeah.
Yeah. But after the parade was over, they drove the golf cart over to our house and picked up all of us, and we played that day, all of us. But
now, how is it that you were able to have like some help, like Ernestine in Florida, but not when you went back to New York?
The cost of living was a lot lower down there. Dad got compensation pay for being away. And then there were other provisions. All of my Ethan Allen furniture was all bought while we were down there. There were perks involved. How much? I really don't remember. And part of the things I came across was pay stubs, so I could establish it. But we lived very comfortably down there.
I love that. I don't know if it was a bathtub in your bedroom or what.
Wasn't that fun? It was a shower, believe it or not. And 2 steps down into it, and all awesome. 4 of you could stand in it. And it was so big that it didn't need a shower curtain or anything. It was beautiful.
Were you sad about leaving all that behind?
At that point, I felt like the last man on the island. I had watched all of my friends leave. The Marvins left. I can still see them driving up Kent Drive on their way. They were headed for Seattle.
And what was he going to do in Seattle?
He was with Boeing.
Oh.
And so he was headed back there. Got laid off within a very short time after they got back. Or else he was transferred to White Sands from there. I'm not sure which. But that tailgate, that tail light driving up the street was so sad to me.
Because you were such good friends?
We were good friends. Everybody had left. It was back to the normal citizens of Cocoa Beach. And really, you know, we were the Johnny-come-latelys, and they didn't want us. We had changed their We had upgraded their schools because the engineers wouldn't move down there. They had a funny school taxation program where a community couldn't vote to tax themselves more money to upgrade their schools. Somehow the whole state had to be upgraded at the same time. So the schools were lousy. But the government had to step in and upgrade the schools so that the engineers would come down. And
wow. And so how long were we there totally?
2.5 years.
It seemed like so much longer.
Uh,
Not in a bad way. It just
Yeah.
seems like it had some, like an imprint.
No, we came back in time for you guys to start school in the fall. Dad had left us in June or July. I still was trying to sell a house.
Which no one's going to buy.
No, because
They're all gone.
one of the offers we had was that the guy would pay our next mortgage payment. Our down payment and the payments we had made were all gone. And he would just pick up the next mortgage payment. And a year later, that's exactly what we did. Grumman helped us. They picked up the part of the mortgage that was tax deductible, I believe. And we had to pick up the rest of it while we were here until we got rid of it.
Which was how long? A year?
It was a year.
So that was probably stressful paying two.
It was stressful. Dad being the cautious. Sometimes he was cautious and sometimes he was nuts. But he did not want to invest in a house up here and have two houses.
Were you glad to get back and close by to Nana and Pop-Up?
They were still very able-bodied, and it was not a priority. I did not like the fact that the public pools down there opened on Memorial Day and closed on Liberty, just like they do here. So that you had a good couple of months, both sides of those dates, that the kids could be swimming and enjoying them, but they were closed. I hated Christmas shopping with air conditioning in the car. And one of the very first year that we were down there, we went out to buy a Christmas tree. And I commented, they're yellow. And the guy is standing there with his spray gun. And he said, what color do you want? So at that point, we went out and bought an artificial tree, our first artificial tree. And it was the one that snowed.
Is that tree still downstairs somewhere?
Yes.
Yeah, figured.
Yes. But we didn't have any of our things. We were permitted, when we went down, to take whatever we could carry in the car and then air freight 3 boxes. So that was it for us for as long as we were going to be there. Until we got the shipment of our stuff, and Grumman shipped it down when we were ready and moved into the house. But we stayed in storage for the year we were in the apartment. And I don't know where I was going with this. The Christmas.
Well, the difference
We
is
handmade all of our Christmas ornaments, paper chains and all that sort of stuff, because we had none of those with us. And you guys swam on Christmas Day because the apartment was 4 sides around a pool.
I remember that.
Yeah. But the Coco Motel was north of us, right across the street. And very first couple of days we were there, I packed the cars from New York, so naturally I packed the sewing machine, but I did not pack the TV. So when you guys found out that I didn't have the TV, you were a little bit upset. So we're in the apartment, and this guy goes running by our windows. We had sliding glass doors right in front, and he goes running by, and then the dogs go running by, and then the police go running by with their guns. And ultimately, everybody comes trooping back with the guys with their hands in handcuffs. And Brian turned to me, and he was pre-kindergarten, he was kindergarten, I guess. And he said, "Gee, Mommy, this is better than TV." But then for the very first time in your entire lives, we left you with a babysitter. We had never left you guys. And we went to a dance. Somehow Rumman was involved, whether it was exclusively Rumman, I don't remember. But I won the door prize. And it was a TV.
Wow.
Yes. You kids wanted us to go out every Saturday night. Oh God, you thought you had died and gone to heaven.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing.
So we probably hadn't gone very long without a TV then.
No, not really, I don't think. Those were good years. I miss the change of seasons so much. And yes, when you live down there, there's very subtle changes, but they're not the glorious colored leaves and the snow. Although we did have snow flurries one year when we were down there. You know, they never hit the ground or anything. But
I remember getting slushies.
yes.
That was, I remember that. The
7-Eleven.
blue slushie was like my big blue.
No, you're right. They were blue.
And I also remember swimming in a lady's house inside a house. I don't know if they were swimming lessons or what they were. Maybe they're piano lessons for Ellen, but I remember a piano and an indoor pool.
Now that I'm not coming up with.
I just remember that.
Because what I was thinking when you said the indoor pool is Pris and Lonnie built their house. Daddy always called it Sewer City because the sewage disposal plant was down in this very uppity, snubby area. And they built their house, only somehow or other they had a conversation pit rather than a living room. And when the tide rose in the Indian River, they backed right to it. It rose in this conversation pit. It was very interesting. So that's what I was thinking you were talking about with the...
I bet it was hard for them to sell their house.
It had to be all taken care of. You couldn't live like that, no. And they sold as soon as things started to change. We were held until pretty close to the end. One of the funny things is we had folding doors on all of the closets, and we were trying to sell a house, and Nana had flown down and was with us. Daddy was back here with Papa, and this guy wanted to see the house, and we hadn't gotten the door back on its track, and it was falling out and everything, and we hadn't made the repair. So Nana stood in the closet, holding the door up, and she had told me, "Don't you dare open this door." But as I was showing the house, I could see the door. She's laughing so hard. The door's going. Another time, showing the house, the wasps down there built mud houses under the eaves of the house. So I was standing there with the garden hose, squirting them and knocking the house down, the hive. It's being silly with you guys and everything. We started squirting each other. Well, we were drenched rats. And this real estate agent comes driving up and wants to show the house. Here I am, this drowned rat. People didn't even go in the house. They wanted nothing to do with it.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah, it was funny.
Wow. I remember when we were here though, weren't we here a month or so when you were still in Florida?
You guys flew up with Nana and Papa.
Mm-hmm.
May have seemed like a month or two. We drove up.
That was all it was?
That was all.
Because I remember getting a present from you like every day. I think you had given like presents for Nana and Papa to give us.
Yeah, I had.
I remember that. And you'd given me this pin, and it was like this shell pin. And it was, I don't know if it was turquoise or blue and had something, and I loved that, getting that. But I thought it was like, to me, I thought it was like a month where we stayed with them, and they gave a present every day. But they're so mean, you know, they're really not easy to be around because they had so many rules. But that was the one thing.
No, we put your dollhouse in the back of the car and drove up with the cat. Mr. Pooh rode all the way back in the car.
Did you get him when you were in Florida, or did you get him in...
No, we got him.
Okay.
Hank had died when you were 6 months old, and we felt that you guys were just too young for a puppy. And then when we got down to Florida, heartworms had just started in, and we didn't want to chance it, so we settled on a cat. And Carolyn Eldridge, her dad was a dentist and owned the apartments that we lived in, and she was allergic to cats and everything, and you guys wanted a cat, and that's how Mr. Pooh became part of the family. And you know, they were good years.
Well, it looks like the battery's almost run out.
Oh.
This has been 38 minutes.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah.
Steady talk.